All right, guys. Here today we are looking at solving by factoring. So we're still solving quadratics. Obviously, that's the name of the game here. This chapter, this quadratics chapter, we have two chapters left: solving quadratics and graphing quadratics. So that's what we'll be looking at here before we wrap things up mid-May, which we got the news on earlier this week. Okay, so zero product property. We are going to use this. We're going to have a lot of times where we have two solutions. It's like yesterday's work with solving by square roots. When you take the square root, when you bring the radical in, you get a plus and minus version. Now today we'll have two answers, but they're not going to be just plus 5 and minus 5. You have maybe two different numbers to go with it. All right. So the zero product property, what that is if this is 0, it doesn't matter what that one is. 0 times anything is going to turn out to be 0. So that's why we want everything to set equal to 0. You'll see that on number 2 over there already. All right. Now, the way we're going to use this is actually going to be our very last step on a question like that one. All right, so if this one, x plus 5 is 0, it doesn't matter what that one will be. We just solve for x by subtracting 5. And so one of our solutions will be at x equals -5. Or if this one were 0, we could take 0 times anything over here. And this one would also turn into 0. So we also have to account for x minus 7 equal to 0. So we would add 7 to both sides, and we would get x equals a positive 7. So my two solutions here are -5 or positive 7. So this is kind of going to be the last step. We didn't have to factor anything yet. We'll be doing that on number 2 here in a second. Now the graph that goes with this, you won't have to do a bunch of this on the test, but I do want to introduce this. The graph, these are what we call our roots or our zeros. That's where it crosses the x-axis. So if here's -5, that would be right there. Positive 7 is all the way out there. So our estimate here, I showed you a couple of these yesterday, our estimate for the parabola would look something like this. Like that. Okay, that's just an estimation of what the parabola would look like. The important thing for you to note is where does it cross the x-axis, because that will always be with our solutions. Okay, so there you go. There's number 1. Feel free to fast forward, rewind. Hopefully not fast forward too much, but rewind and pause on things if it didn't make sense. Okay, let's go to number 2. Now this one is back to factoring, which we had the test on, which I will mention there's a handful of you who need to still take that test. Please reach out to me if you haven't taken that test yet. And we're going to take a times c. Now the good thing here is a is 1, so we only have to do factors of 10. We basically get to take the shortcut to the answer of the factoring part here. So factors of 10, we got 1 and 10, 2 and 5, right? So we want the one that combines to this. So we want the 1 and the 10. Now because this is negative, they're both going to be the same sign. They will both be negative. So our factored part here, which we've already done, so I'm not going to spend too long on this, x minus 1 times x minus 10 is equal to 0. So how is that different from what we did 2 weeks ago on the test back before spring break? Well, the difference is that this is equal to 0. Before we just factored and now we were done. We didn't have to do anything else. But now we have to do this part. Now I will say this. If you recognize this, especially when it's a 1 out front, okay, I wouldn't force students ever to show this work. I think it's good if you show it. If it helps you, go ahead and do it. But what's going to make this 0 is just the opposite sign. So if this is x minus 1, positive 1 will be my solution. If this is -10, positive 10 will be my solution there. All right, and so you can do that. You just got to be careful because I'll have students who they'll do this part and try to go from here to the answer. They get them all kinds of mixed up. All right, so I would always write out all of this part. If you want to skip this little part here, you don't have to. You can write it out every time, but what will make this 0 is just the opposite sign. Okay, so as far as the graph goes, you don't have to do this on the homework, but I think it's good to show you. Here is positive 1, 10 is out there, and so our parabola would go right there. This one would go right there. Okay, so just so you can kind of see an estimate of that, because we're going to use that later on, probably before the end of April. Okay, all right, so there's number 2. All right, let's go ahead, go a little faster here. We'll go to number 3. This time we got more factoring. This time y squared minus 8y is equal to 20. All right, so what's different about this one The reason I need you to see this one is because it's not equal to 0. So we need to make it equal to 0 so we can factor. So don't try to factor this. Make sure we set it equal to 0 first. So I'm going to subtract the 20. So I get y squared minus 8y minus 20 equals 0. And so now I'm going to go through my whole factoring process now that it's equal to 0. When this is a 1, that's good because we get to skip straight from here to the answer for the factor part, and then we get our answer here. So factors of negative 20. I've got 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 3 doesn't work, 4 and 5. So which of those will combine to 8? Now it's negative here, so it's which one subtracts to 8, that'll be here. And because it's negative 8, the larger column, all of these would have had to be the negatives. You know, this one didn't work, that one didn't work. So 2 minus the 10 is what works to negative 8. So we get y plus the 2, because it's positive 2. Y minus the 10 is equal to 0. Right? And so then our solutions, what will make that one 0? So this is the same process, just the factoring was a little bit more complicated on this one, but what would make this 0 is a negative 2, or what will make that 0 is a positive 10. So there you go. Negative 2 or positive 10 for my two solutions. That would be back here at negative 2. Positive 10 is all the way over there. I'm off my graph here. But our parabola estimate would look something like that. Okay? So, because we got negative 2, positive 10, those are our roots or our solutions. All right. Just got 2 left here. I'm going to go ahead and erase this so I don't have to erase again. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead to number 4. We've got 0 equals m squared plus m minus 30. Okay, so once again, it doesn't matter that 0's on this side. As long as it's equal to 0, we're good to go. So we're going to do a times c, we get negative 30. We got 1 and 30, 2 and 15, 3 and 10, 4 doesn't work, 5 and 6. All right, so which combination will combine in this case to a positive 1? Well, that one won't work. That doesn't come close. This one doesn't, so it has to be this one. This could combine to 1 by subtraction. Again, this sign will tell me addition or subtraction. A little bit of review of factoring there. So pos 1 means that the big column is all positives. These would be all the negatives. So that's why it's negative 5 and positive 6. So we get 0 equals m minus 5 times m plus 6. So there's our factor part, and then our solutions, what will make this 0 would be, what will make that one 0 would be a positive 5, what will make that one 0 is a negative 6. So don't try to go from here to the answer. Okay, that's my point there. All right, so there's my 2 solutions, whereas yesterday we had a lot of plus and minus. Today you might have a positive, negative, you might not, but they're probably not going to match up. So now we can go to the graph here. We're at positive 5. And we're back at negative 6. And again, you won't have to do this on this particular test, but I think with having a shorter amount of time and finding that out this week, I think this is really good for you to see that the solutions are where it crosses the x-axis, and just to start thinking about those parabolas. Okay? All right, last one, number 5 is a bit of a special case here. 5n squared plus 15n equals 0. Okay, so for this one, we don't have a trinomial. Trinomial's 3 terms. I know you guys have, it's been over a month now. We've probably forgotten a lot about all this stuff. But now we only have 2 terms. 2 terms is a binomial. So when we have a binomial, we can look for either special cases by difference of squares or factor GCF. These are neither perfect squares. Okay, and this is has a variable. So because of that, the only option we have is the factor of GCF. So does 5 go into that? Yes, it does. It's already equal to 0, so we can't move that over. So we can factor out a 5, and they both have an n. So we factor out 5n, and to see what's left over, we divide that back in. So 5 into 5, we get 1n, because of the 2 minus the 1. And then these n's cancel out, so we get plus 3. All right? Now, sometimes students get really confused on this. They'll put n equals and they'll say, well, this is negative 5. Don't do that, because technically 5n equal to 0, what is 0 divided by anything? 0 divided by 5 is 0. So if this is multiplied, that's where you can have a solution of 0. That's okay. And then what will make this 0 would be -3. So my two solutions are 0 or -3 for that one. Okay, if you have questions, feel free to let me know. The graph would go through the origin here. It's kind of hard to do with, there we go, it's somewhere in there. And then -3 is back here. So our parabola would run something like this. There you go. Okay? All right, so hopefully this has been helpful. I'm trying to keep it as condensed as I can. I know we got a lot of information to cover, but the main thing is that we are making progress every day. If you have questions, let me know. Try to stay on top of things. We got 3 days a week. Like I said with yesterday, we're trying to keep it to about 30 to 40 minutes per class. You got 5 classes. Hopefully, that's a full school day, and you got time to break for lunch, do something else. So if you have questions, please send me a Canvas message. It's getting cold out here in the garage, cold outside. So I'm heading out.